We love our Entegra 24B. For us, the floor plan, the features, and everything about it to have what we have in an RV that is right at 27 feet bumper to bumper has been absolutely amazing. That said, if there was one thing that concerned us even before we bought this, we knew we were looking for this model, it's this big honkin' slide. You know, it's 15 and a half feet long, it's a stair step, and we knew that that could be the Achilles heel of the type of travel that we like to do. In fact, that happened pretty early in its life, and now we have switched over from the Lippert Schwintek system for the slide over to Vroom rails and that mechanical system. And in this video, I'm going to go over whether we really feel like that was an upgrade and some of the pros and cons that we can look now in hindsight to that system. Now, upfront contract, this is going to come with a good bit of technical information and also just some drama as I unfold the saga really from the beginning to the end. I realize that might not be for all of you, so I've gone ahead and used the chapter section if you want to skip around, but anyway, here comes the full story. So let's begin with initial reliability. Our motorhome, Tumbleweed is her name, is a 2021 model year. Again, Entegra 24B is the floor plan. We purchased it from Tucson, Arizona from, I'm going to say, the first owners. The truth is there was another owner that never did a road trip in there. They bought it from Michigan. They drove it to Tucson, and then they used it for 25,000 miles worth of its life, and pretty much did local camping, but very regularly on several weekends. And for them, the Schwintek or the Lippert Schwintek system worked relatively reliable. You know, what they told us was they did have some trouble where they had to do a few resyncs time and again, and they had allowed a little easier access to the controller to be able to put it into that mode. But Cliff, the previous owner, said it has always gone in and out without any flaw. And to back that up, we drove it home from Tucson. We flew to look at it. We liked what we saw. We bought it on the site. And then we drove it back, not super aggressively. And we had several camping nights all the way home, and it worked without issue. In fact, our problems actually began not until after winter. We had done several upgrades in the RV. I'd add lithium batteries. I moved them to the back. We'd done quite a bit of other work in other videos that you can find in Tumbleweed's build playlist. Regardless, it was shortly after that where it all started to unfold. So as a part of those winter upgrades, particularly the electrical upgrade that I had already mentioned, the RV spent a significant amount of time with the electrical system completely disconnected. And for that reason, I wasn't overly alarmed when we went to pull the slide in for the first time after that was complete, that we got a fault. Now this said, the fault was for a Hall effect shorted sensor. It didn't jive with what I would expect from that type of application, but I put the controller into manual mode and it came in without any issue whatsoever. The purpose for bringing it in was we had a service scheduled to redo some of the gasketing or sealant under the bunkhouse that had cracked and dry rotted, and we wanted to get that fixed before we left the road. It was still a little cool in the shop, and I was worried about keeping it to an appropriate temperature. When we got it back from that service, we went to put the slide out, and I got the fault again. Now, I hadn't done a resync, but I thought this time I will. Again, I have a shorted Hall effect sensor that has prompted this, but I thought, let's just be better safe than sorry. I went through the full resync process to the Schwintek's manual, and all seemed well. We ran it in and out multiple times. We never saw any other issue with it. All was good. This included through packing, gearing everything up, and getting ready for that first road trip, now just days away. Slide came in just fine. Sadly, however, when we got to our first campsite, we went to put the slide out. It faulted. And this was the first time that when it faulted, the front was a little delayed and the back was stopping, and it started to get just a little bit out of cattywampus, I'll call it. Again, went into manual mode, and it worked just fine to get it out. But we're now on the road, and we thought we don't want to do this all the time, especially with it starting to get out of sync. So we looked for a roadside, a mobile tech, or a place that we could stop at. We ended up finding the latter. I don't remember the name of the place. It's not really relevant. We stopped at a place that to look over the system, potentially resync it, and help troubleshoot. We told them the fault code. Unfortunately, in this case, the technician, he just didn't listen to us. I can't sugarcoat this too much. Just didn't listen at all. Immediately went to running it in and out. And at part of his troubleshooting, I should have pulled the plug and said, just stop, because he had the slide so twisted and sideways that I knew that with the soft aluminum rails that the Schwintek system has, we have likely had mechanical failure. I didn't do that, and ultimately he was able to get it to resync. He's then later pointing to some mechanical fatigue that was there, and it's the cause of the problem. I think this is a chicken-egg thing. My personal opinion is it might have been present. I couldn't argue, but I felt like this was all happening largely because of the work that he had just done. Regardless, we went down the road, fingers crossed that we're going to at least make it through this trip. And unfortunately, it just continued to get worse. In fact, by the second stop, it was now, I'm going to call it chitty chitty bang bang, but it was popping, clicking, skipping, and it seemed to get worse every time the slide went in and out. And we knew it just wasn't feasible to complete the trip with the RV. So we actually abandoned, we sprinted home. We have a video on it where we just, we abandoned that first trip because of these issues. We threw all of our stuff into the truck. We had to do some work in our truck into our old Overland setup, and we completed the trip with that. All the while planning on that trip for, well, now what? What do we do to get Tumbleweed here back on the road? So we got a little bit of bad luck here, and we're going to have to do a repair to the system. Started to call around and find out what folks thought it would look like. Obviously not seeing the RV, but just talking to them. And overwhelmingly, whether we were talking to shops, remote techs, really anyone, nearly everyone was recommending all new rails. There's the lower, the upper, and then on each side. So 4 new rails. And then also the H column. The H column is what is behind the ceiling here. It's sort of the mechanism. There's a torque tube or a rod that connects to a motor. In our case, the motor is up top for our system. It has a gearbox with a little gear on it. That rod goes down to another gear down here. So just one motor runs a side. They have to be synced up correctly. But regardless, we're looking at a whole new system because they're saying you really should get a new H column, that mechanism inside there, and then you should get all new rails. And if we're making that kind of investment in labor and everything, Alana and I thought, well, is there something better out there? Because the Schwintek certainly isn't considered reliable in the RV industry. So we hit the old interwebs, did a little googly oogly there, and overwhelmingly, the name Vroom continued to come up. And lo and behold, they're a manufacturer that's basically here for the Schwintek errors. They make their own proprietary rails and their own H-column mechanisms, but the rest of the system, meaning the controller and the cables, those remain Schwintek components. So it really just addresses that mechanical issue, which is one of the main things we have to deal. But I want to earmark here that we still have that fault that really has never been troubleshot that says Hall effect sensor. Regardless, though, we're getting a new motor with this system, so maybe the issue would be there. When it comes to having this system installed, Vroom does not allow you to just order parts and do measurements and do it yourself. You have to go to one of the installers that they have certified for installations. They feel it's too unique, and they want to make sure that you have a positive experience with their systems. That's fine. I hear in the shop, even though we like to do everything ourselves, I think this would have been a little harder for us to properly support the RV and syncing just between Alana and I, making sure everything measured up. When it comes to installers, unfortunately, though, for us being in Ohio, the closest to either of us, I think it was Connecticut and then Wisconsin. Those were the physically the two that were the closest to us. Still more than an 8-hour drive. And then many, including Vroom themselves, they're in the Tucson area, are all out west. And there's not a high number of them. But because Vroom does the certification of the installers, Alana's and my focus really turned into lead time. What does their backlog look like, and when can they get us in to do the installation? Vroom can turn the custom machining of rails and get that delivery done well in advance of being able to install it themselves. We had considered going to Tucson to have it installed, but Wisconsin was by far and away the fastest shop. I'm not going to give you the name for reasons later, but they were the fastest shop that was able to get us in for the installation. We gave them a deposit. All went well. We provided them with many measurements that they needed to ensure that they got everything correct, not just information off the rails, but they asked for a considerable amount of other information. We provided all of that, and we went to have it installed. And so far, everything's going pretty well, but again, starts to fall a little bit apart on the post installation. So some of the additional information, in addition to just the measurements that were requested, that we provided the installer, was sort of the synopsis of how we got here. And Alana and I are both very technical people. I'm in engineering. She was in automotive when we met in trade school, and we've maintained doing a lot. And one of the things that when troubleshooting or doing a job like this is the more data, the better. We really want to understand the history. It can all become very important of how we got here. And we thought that the folks that we were interfacing with were not likely going to be the people to install the system. So knowing the faults and the controller issues and some of that would all be valuable information. It would also help them prep if they would need to have any additional parts. Again, the system is supposed to reuse those cables and the controller, and if one of those is having a fault that started the whole mechanical meltdown, they need to be prepared for that. So anyway, not only did we say that in an email and in the phone when we're scheduling everything on the front end, but we arrived early and dropped it off. We made sure that we met with a technician that was working in the evening, service writer and technician type of person to reiterate all of that information. And it was captured again on the paperwork when we dropped it off in the evening. And we said, here's our cell phone numbers. We're in the hotel down the road. If you have any questions at all during the installation, by all means, please let us know. The installation was scheduled to be a day and a half. Really, almost all of it is done in the first day, and the second portion of the day is for them to sort of do the finishing touches. So we weren't surprised that by 11 a.m. on the second day, we got a phone call that said, hey, your RV's all done. Good news. Everything went well. Come and get her. And we made our way over. Actually, they came to pick us up. They offered a ride. They came to pick us up, which was very nice of them. We went to the shop. We went out. First impressions when we walked in the RV, they had recently mopped the floor, but we noticed that there was a lot of grease spots and some other stuff on our brand new mattress that we had put in the bed, which unfortunately we haven't gotten all the way out. And near immediately, I started to notice some little things, but honestly, I can be a little picky. So I'm tempering myself here a little bit, like, hey, don't freak out. That'll probably clean. Let's not worry about anything. The gentleman is very nice. I really like the technician. However, my heart sunk when immediately when he goes to bring the slide in, it faults and it won't come in. And it's the exact same fault that they had to begin with. And this is literally what it looked like. You know, he hits the button and the motors, they kind of whine, and it starts to come in and then it faults. And he goes, I was afraid that would happen. It did it a couple of times. I was so frustrated in that moment for us to have communicated as much as we had. I did compose myself and I asked, yeah, that's why it's here. It wasn't just because we wanted black rails instead of silver rails. There was a reason why we were having to do this work. There was a reason why you struggled to get it out and what was going on there. He assured us, though, that he had checked the cables and he had done a lot when he was doing some of the other routing. So his first indication was, I'm worried about the controller. Fine. If you looked at the cables, you checked the cables, then that was his vocabulary. I checked the cables. Then fine, the controller. There was an RV shop that was close. They again gave us a ride to go to an RV shop to buy now a new controller. We were able to negotiate a bit. We picked another place, but for a moment that was going to cost us near $800 to get a new controller. We ended up finding one for $285 that was brand new at another, just a little bit further down the road to an RV place that had one in stock. We bought that, we brought it back, we put it in, near immediately, the same fault code. So it's not the controller. So at this point, I begin to ask, how did you check the cables? Did you ring them out? Because now I'm looking for cables in the next components, and we're starting to get later in the day, so we're calling around. And when I say, did you ring them out, this is a term us wire biters, the folks in the electrical industries, would use for like using a megger or using an ohm meter to verify that a cable is electrically functional. If there's a breakdown in the insulation, then a megger will often indicate that, where just a simple continuity test wouldn't. But regardless, I'm looking for, how was this cable checked? And he said, I did a visual check. Which is really frustrating to me, because I know in our research that Vroom issues and uses a cable tester, a little box that they use to validate. It's like part of their installation that we had read up was supposed to be done. It didn't appear that well, we know now that wasn't done. So anyway, I'm now questioning the cables. When it came to getting the cables checked, I said, well, let's check the cables. Do you have this box? Yeah, they gave us this thing, but I don't know how to use it. So Alana and I are now on the internet, and it's at this point where we have now fully taken over troubleshooting of our RV in their shop and even using their tools. It's frankly a little bit awkward. While the gentleman's very nice, honestly, he just couldn't troubleshoot his way out of a wet paper bag, or we didn't see it that day. Again, super nice guy. They were on a personal level, they were really more than willing to help, but it was clear their entire attitude at the facility was, this is really your problem. And they're not entirely wrong in that, but at the same time, it's there for this problem, right? So anyway, I think you can sense both the temperament and the frustration. Ultimately, we found even the visual inspection wasn't done because we found where the previous owners at some point, they didn't share everything with me. They had pinched the cable on the front and there was a questionable cable repair. That did not solve it. We ended up finding it was the back cable that had failed, and before they closed, I just bought a cable that was entirely too long. It's now late in the day, and we routed the cable from the motor through the middle of the RV and through sort of a vent to get it back to the controller. And it went in and out enough times that Alana and I are now frustrated, and we say, let's just go home. We'll fix the cables. We can do all of that now. It's mechanically working. Let's just go home. That wasn't the end, though. When we did get home and we were in the middle of that repair and we started to digest what had happened, unfortunately, we found where they didn't install the seals correctly. We had the wrong kind of seals. Our bulb seal is on the flange of our slide. They installed seals that had an additional bulb seal. That's not a major issue. The bigger issue is at the top, they had run the side seal. Like this. So the top seal was behind the side seal. It wasn't done like a shingle where the top would go to the side so any water would sort of sheet down. They had it like this. And in fact, they had done it so bad that in this kind of corner down here, there was like a 3/4 inch gap. Like we had now spent a significant amount of money to have this system installed. And I didn't even have what I felt like was a functional RV because it's spring. We're back home now, and it rains a lot in Ohio, and we can't predict when that's going to happen. I'm going to try to pick this up for you a bit, but basically, with a lot of phone calls and things, they offered to make it right, but we'd have to drive another 9 hours back to Wisconsin to do it. And now I'm questioning the quality of their work. We found dents on our flooring inside and some other issues that was like, I just don't want you all to touch our RV again. And where we compromised was they gave us a check for the labor rate to have another shop or technician replace all 3 seals now because they had damaged the top ones and cut them for the wrong overlap. And then they were going to supply the seals. Unfortunately, when the seals came in, they were wrong. They didn't give us the right length. They did we sent pictures, we gave them measurements, and they sent us all wrong seals, and then they went radio silent on us. They were done. They were no longer communicating with us at all. So Alana and I purchased the seals. We got all of that work done on our own because they're not cheap. So the money they gave us for the labor went into the seals so that then we could basically redo that work on our own. And then we fixed all the cables and everything. And we're pretty optimistic at this point that this is behind us. Now, I will share that through much of this, we have been communicating with Joey at Vroom. And this wasn't to rat out the installer directly, but because they have this certification process, the installers start to speak on behalf of Vroom in general. And we want to make sure that they understood what the customer experience looked like, not only with the problems that we had, but the clear not understanding how to use some of the troubleshooting tools that Vroom provides, and also some of the condition that we found the RV in and some of the work that we had to do to bring it back full circle. So anyway, we're all done here. We're going to hit the road and we're going to start our first big trip. How long will everything last? All right, brand new rails on, systems working, all sealed up with new seals. We're ready to hit the road and have some fun for an extended road trip. How long before we had our first problem? The first night. Literally, the very first night we had a storm roll through, had a significant amount of rain. That rain was splashing, sort of driving sideways right here at the side. And we did, in fact, have a small leak that made its way inside. I'll come back to really the leak issue a little bit later, but I can tell you it was not from the seals that we had installed. There's something else going on there that I'll circle back to. The real issue was that as we were making our way west, we got into central Colorado, and it's a little bumpy right now there. The road could certainly use a little bit of love. Regardless, as we're hitting some bumps, I hear this really, really loud snap, crack, pop, kind of like a cross between a rock on glass and a rock hitting like this part, like my wedding ring hitting, that, but like really loud. It was the kind of loud that with me driving here, I did that. Like, what in the world was that? Like, it was startling. About 30 miles down the road, we heard it again. We're going, what in the world is that? Alana, we do a quick pit stop. Alana's looking around like, is something banging inside? Because we've got some stuff stored in the bunk. We don't use this as a bunk space. And we're like, what in the world? We didn't see anything inside. We weren't in a good place to get out at that time. We go back down the road, made it about 100 miles. We heard it again. And by now we're needing a little bit of gas. And I said, we need to give, like, what in the world is going on here? Stop for gas. I get out, and it didn't take me long to find out that the H column here was separating from the RV. Behind this little black molding, you might be able to see a few bumps. I'll put up a closer image of those bumps here. Behind that was rivets, and we were popping those rivets. So what we heard was pop, 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 and then ultimately one more before the day closed out. So this lower portion here was no longer mechanically attached, and with the slide in, there's a good bit of leverage here, and we had about a half-inch gap here on the RV where it was pulling itself away. We did not contact the original installer. We're done with that. We contacted Joey at Vroom directly, and we said, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. We were polite, but also very disappointed. Immediately, Joey took ownership. He was pointing us, do you want to go to another installer? Do you want to come to me? The more we communicated back and forth, he said, I really think it would be best for you to bring that to us. The faster you can get here, I want to go through it. I want to check everything. I want to make sure you all are in good shape. So they were carving out special shop time for us. We sprinted. We made it down there. We canceled our plans in Colorado. We made our way to Tucson, Arizona very, very quickly. The technician came out. We got there in the middle of the night. The technician came out essentially the following day, and we camped in the RV in their parking lot. And he says, so what, tell me what's going on. We gave him the whole rundown of what was happening. We briefed, not as long as I got into with you, but we briefed some of the previous issues, again, to give some of the detail on status of installation. One thing, I don't remember the technician's name that came out to meet us in the morning, but when I mentioned that this rail, when I showed him, he goes, yeah, we've had that happen from time to time. We no longer use rivets on these larger slides. We use larger bolts, but we had rivets. And also, while I had his attention, I spoke a little bit about the water leak, and he indicated that is also a known issue. That's a known issue, that they thought they had some ideas they might be able to work on. I'm going to, again, leave that for just a moment. The bottom line is Vroom has really stepped up here. They're wanting to do a whole thing. They think they only need it for a day. We went and did some shopping. We had lunch. We tried to basically kill a day. And then later in the afternoon, we went to sort of visit and check in where we're at. And again, I'll go ahead and pop up some pictures here that I took. But what we found was a very, very invasive complete reinstallation. So Joey was now present, and he assured us that the previous place did a fine job of installing it. So they did a quality job installing it. Nonetheless, I'm here because it's mechanically separating itself from the RV, and they're redoing everything, like everything. They they physically moved. They added aluminum plates. Again, I'll put a picture up here. They put aluminum plates for the rollers to run on. They added additional rollers underneath it to help support the slide. They completely redid the rails. The H columns were off. I don't know if they replaced them, but like everything got completely redone. And in order to do that, they also completely disassembled the dinette that we had just built, which was a little frustrating, but we're pleased that they're taking this so very serious. The end result is we've got some additional rollers. We've got a different bottom brace. They've used larger bolts on this. I will put a picture up if I can. They also added like a lip brace to the H column on the inside to give some additional support, again, because of the physical portion of the slide that they did that. The real, like, while this is all positive, I'm annoyed that we're having to redo everything. I'm also very thankful that they're not a question has been asked. Like, they're owning it and they're fixing it, and they're doing all that they can to get us back on the road in a timely manner. We recognize they had a lot of work yet to do and not much time to do it. So we offered, listen, we can get a hotel here close. We'll just drive over there. We'll stay there. We'll give you some more time. He goes, that would be great. You should be able to come by early in the morning, say, 9 to 9:30. We were arriving at 9:15. Lo and behold, the RV was sitting out front, all done. They had done some rain testing. They had done some water and rain testing, and when closed, they said they rest assured we will have no issue. That being said, we had the other keys, and when we got inside, I noticed that our refrigerator wasn't on. He turned the main disconnect off, so we had food in there. We wanted to get that fridge going again really quickly. And when I came in, our dinette was like cattywampus. The carpet was pinched. It just didn't put it back together correctly at all. There was a sideways screw, some missing screws. I was so frustrated, I didn't want to talk about it. I just grabbed my tools and started fixing it. Like, I needed to focus on something with that. We haven't even ran the slide out or in at this point. Joey later came out because we were missing 2 of our chairs that they had taken out, or like our camp chairs they had taken out. And he said, here you go. And he has this magic bin of hardware that didn't get reused. I'm a little frustrated about that. But he was now very rushed. We didn't get Joey at his best time. I don't know whether he was frustrated with us or whether we had just put him far behind. But he's like, listen, I just came out to give you this stuff. I've got a meeting I've got to get back to, and he walked away. So we didn't get to communicate very much there. There was no post inspection. It was, we think you're good to go, and away you go. Since then, we have found, like before, our dinette, we were able to fix everything, but there's a dent in the table, and there's some damaged fabric where they had stuff leaning against the fabric that's got a little scuff on it. Marginal for the amount of work, but still, these are new things that are happening to that. I'm very concerned with some of the seals, some of the gasket. It looks to me like they just bumped the rails back up against the existing silicone, because I've got like where I can see it separated from the rail. So that's something that I have to work on. Either they did a poor job of it because of timing, or it just didn't get done well. But from that point, mechanically, we've had no issues. It's always gone in. It's always gone out. Like, it's doing everything it's supposed to do for the most part. Late in life, as the trip has continued, there's really 2 aspects that we're not sure about, and I'll jump into those now. So those 2 open issues, one I keep mentioning over and over. Let's get at it. The water leaking, and I spoke pretty confidently that it wasn't the wiper seals. I know that it wasn't the wiper seals. It's something that has continued to persist even after the rework by Vroom. When I did the original wiper seals, I used one of these little profile jigs here, and then I cut that seal like exact. Like, it was wiping in and out very well. I was actually able to see by misting on the rail when we would run it in and out. It did clean off that rail pretty doggone well. So it was in good shape. Unfortunately, the Vroom did not do quite as good a job with the wiper seals. In fact, I intend to redo them because, in fact, they cut them so deeply that the wiper seal is long enough it will flap all the way inside the RV. So when it's wiping any water off the side of the RV, if it is wet, it's actually squeegeeing it to drop inside the RV, not out. So I need to shorten that up a little bit, its engagement with the side of the RV. Regardless, the big issues here come down to design. If I pop up a Schwintek rail, you've likely seen these, you have one if you're watching this video, or you're just curious. There's a few unique and subtle design features. Like, we talk trash about these things a lot because it's really soft aluminum, but from the very top, the top has just a little bit of an angle to it. It's subtle, but it's not flat. It has a little angle, and that means water that comes down the side of the RV and hits that wants to work its way out. The next thing down is that little serpentine sort of neat little gear that goes back and forth. Beyond it looking kind of cool, what it does is it creates a bunch of little U shapes. And what that does, while it may fill up a little bit, it completely stops water from being able to laterally move in the gear mechanism itself. It'll basically go to that U, fill up the U, and drain on out. And then underneath, because they use a very narrow V-style roller bearing, the entire rail is basically square-ish, other than that little angled top. It's basically a square-ish rail. So it's very easy to cut the lip seal and put it up tight against it. In contrast, when we look at the Vroom system right from the very get-go, if we think about a water drop moving down the side, we hit this top rail, which is flat. This should be filled up with silicone, so we won't complain that edge too much. But the one just below it, that is a completely flat surface on top of the gear mechanism there. It does fill up with water, and it absolutely lets water move laterally, which could include moving into the RV. Now, what Vroom did, this was one of the things that I'd indicated, is they added a little piece of foam. I'll pop a picture up there, but they basically, a couple of them are cut pretty bad. Like, they let the shop mouse chew it off. It's not very square, but they put a little piece of foam to sort of help water as it wants to move down that top rail, not go past that area there. The little foam, though, because that rail moves, it hasn't been very effective. Sure, in a goose drowning rain, not as much water's coming in, but it's just that, not as much water. Water still makes its way in. What's not clear to me, though, and it's very difficult for me to troubleshoot, is the very next rail. You'll notice the gear mechanisms look completely different. For the Vroom, it's a straight cut gear. It's open above and below the gear teeth themselves. That allows water to move laterally pretty easily. In addition, because the bearing mechanisms are different, it's like a wider roller bearing, which is good for strength under the Vroom rail. What that causes is this secondary shelf. So I have one on the top, and then I have another one on the bottom that is completely flat. And this too lets water move laterally, left to right, whether it's driving or whether, honestly, we find that in some of the real misty rains, it's worse. It doesn't have the same sort of velocity to get carried away, so it actually can pool a little bit more. When I mentioned this on site and I spoke with Joey about it, there's two frustrating things that came out of this. And one was, he said, look, we're really 4 to 5 years from being ready for market. In fact, if it wasn't for, and I'll quote here, Mr. Tiffin begging us for a solution that wasn't the Lippert Schwintek, we wouldn't have anything at all. And that's alarming to me, because there's hundreds, if not thousands, of these things already out there. And he's telling me that their go-to-market is still 4 to 5 years away before they're completely ready with their install. The other aspect is, he said, this is our first rail design. We're working on a new design that should help some of that, which sort of, it validates the comment that they're still not quite ready to be in the market. And honestly, with the price we paid, I did not expect to be a beta user. And again, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of these out there. The other thing I'm not sure about, to throw stones back at myself here, there are hundreds, if not thousands. I don't know how the people on the forums are not complaining about possible water intrusion. Are they lucky for their RV install? Did the rails end up pointing down towards the outside and they don't have that? And speaking of that, this is a get out of jail free card for Vroom on the installation. We have one rail where the leak is actually the upper and lower towards the front. Unfortunately, when the RV is level, those rails are not installed level. I'll pop it up here. You can see where I'm actually touching the bubble, and the side that is high is the outside. So water wants to run towards the RV, not away from the RV. And there's a couple factors here that are not always in any installer's control here. This slide is moving in and out. It's a big piece, and the factories, when they make these, they don't make anything square. Like when we measured this out, it's some pretty wonky measurements, and they have to do whatever they can do to get this thing moving in and out nice and parallel and to track well for the overall mechanical livelihood. In fact, for ours, the top rail not only is kind of funny this way, but they had to put shims behind it, like a 1/4-inch shim to sort of square it up to make sure that we had the right teeth engagement. Like everything was just pretty wonky. The Schwintek seemed to be okay with it, but when they went to put this system in, they struggled with it. So that's a huge problem to me. You can't predict how those rails are going to end up, or at least it's my understanding you can't. That's what we were informed. And for us, we now have like a lifelong leak. Our fix is we put a puppy pad down underneath that corner and we try to catch any moisture quickly that comes in. Or B, we force the RV out of level so that we basically lift this side, the passenger side of the RV up, and get that top rail kind of heading down the other way. Unfortunately, our bed is in the back end of the slide and our head is to the outside, so it ends up making us a little feet high. So if we have to do that, then we're putting some extra pillows behind us. It's not ideal. It's not what I would want given the money we spent. I'm trying to think of different ways to seal this up. I'm open to ideas if you want to put them in the comments, but there you go. The other major design flaw, in my opinion, we didn't talk about this, but my engineering for a number of the years, I was a motion engineer, and basically I sized servo motors and I did electrical system designs for the right motor and cable application to make things move in automation. So I speak here on quite a bit of competence. Vroom brags about the speed, that it moves faster. It's pretty marginal. Like, I don't know why it's such a big deal. They say, hey, it's faster too, and everyone's kind of excited about it. I never thought I wished the slide was faster. The thing is, I told you, we reuse the cables and we reuse the controller. That means no additional current is being put into the system. The same amount of current is provided. I've got a gnat flying around me, which means that to have more speed, I traded torque. And that may be okay. That may make it more sensitive to the stopping and things like that. Here's where it's a concern to me. We have noticed on the road, on larger travel days, particularly those with bumps and curves, to the right, the slide slowly works its way out. Not huge. Typically a 1/4. The most we have seen is 3/4. It will move out enough that the lower bulb seal will actually come off of the RV. It does seem to stop it, like it doesn't continue to get worse, but I worry about the actual holding torque in now that they have this different gear ratio on their motor. It could also be backlash in the gears that allow it to do it. I haven't investigated that system enough, but the bottom line is it coasts out a little bit. And like our original installers, when we simply asked Joey, is this a normal behavior, or could be something else wrong with it opening up a little bit as we road travel, he too has now gone radio silent. So I don't know, but that is a situation that we have in the RV. So anyway, those are the two open-ended issues that are unresolved for us. I don't know how much can be the water. I really want to continue to solve the backing off. I don't know that we can ever do anything about that. So anyway, you might be able to guess, but the very last section that we finally made our way to is, will we do it again? And do we suggest it? You might be surprised. So look, here's the deal. We had a lot of drama here. This is a very long video. I'm sorry, but there's a lot of detail and really the whole saga that led to this point. For us, I can tell you no. I would not do Vroom again. I would not go through the entire thing. And in truth, we could completely replace the Schwintek system twice for the price of the Vroom, and then to be left with some of the open-ended issues that we have, I think it was not a sound investment, especially learning that it's still essentially in beta mode, and there's a new design that may come out in the near future. I would at least hold off, if not, just not do it at all, and instead just not buy an RV with Schwintek ever again. I can tell you, Alana and I will never do that. So anyway, does that mean that's good for everyone? It doesn't, because when we were reading up a lot about this, there's some people that right from the very get-go, there's such a mechanical issue that they they just can't rely on their slide going in and out from the very beginning. And whether it's because they didn't put enough rollers in, whether it's because it was out of plumb or square or something like that, sometimes like it's just bad. And I will tell you, there is more mechanical compliance, the ability to sort of flex and move and get cattywampus. There's more in the mechanics of the Schwintek system. While there's issues with the water, there's also some mechanical advantages. And if your RV has those things and you love your RV and the floor plan, even the headaches that we still have left, they may completely make it worth you doing the upgrade. Another thing, Joey pointed out that really where they began and what they were designing for was some of the Class A RVs that sort of have like a bed slide. These are the ones that are like 8 to 12 foot long and they only come out like 12 to 16 inches. They're a little more straightforward. For us, it's a 15.5-foot slide, and it comes out really pretty far from the RV, and it's a bi-level, so this spread of the rails, it's different on the far side. Frankly, I don't think it's good for this slide system at all, but here we are. If you have a Schwintek system that works and you can pinpoint what went wrong, like we now can, that we had a bad cable that was causing a Hall effect, and then the mechanical issue happened because of that failure, I'd put a new cable in it, and then I would just replace it likewise. Like if it had worked consistently, since 2021, we should have just gone back, frankly, to the Schwintek system in hindsight. If you're one of those others that just, you can't rely on opening and closing, then maybe it's right for you. I know this is going to be controversial, and I know this was a really long video, but I wanted to share the entire story and how we ended up here. Hopefully you get some benefit and it helps you in your decision making in the future, and we hope to see you out on the road. And go check out some of our fun time videos where this thing takes us out and we get to explore hiking, camping, national parks, and all the good stuff that comes along with it, and enough of this bad stuff. See you then. Bye-bye.